teach at the University of Ulster on the Foundation Core Programme, and I'm also a practicing artist. I think it's important that if you teach the subject, it's important that you're also a practitioner, so you're part of that continuum. Teaching pays the bills, but artwork is something that I practice as often as I can. I don't think you choose a style. I think the style chooses you. I mean, they're essentially abstract paintings, but I've been using single images, which, as I say, just throw the kind of idea of it being just purely self-referential and abstract, slightly off kilter. Sometimes the images are just inanimate objects, like ordinary, mundane, everyday, commonplace objects, like a ladder. Or sometimes the images are a little bit more loaded, which allows room for associations to be drawn. In 2 or 3 paintings recently, I've used this image of a sword. On the one hand, it was a weapon, so it's to do with conflict, and on the other hand, it was it implied religion because it's a cross. So religion and conflict, the use of one, say, inanimate object or image, might have resonance or meaning to one individual, and another resonance or meaning to another individual. But that's fine. That's the difference is there in the terms of the subjective approach. I'm a great believer in sort of the idea of a vocabulary that's dealing with a vocabulary that's exclusive to painting, as opposed to other media, because a painting in today's society is kind of up against a sort of tidal wave of imagery, from photographic advertising and so on, media imagery. So I think it's important that painting sort of deals with something that's alternative to that, and that's what I try to do in the work. I think there's a lot of very interesting contemporary art happening in this part of the world. I mean, traditionally, I think visual art has been sort of in the shadow for years, been in the shadow of the literary tradition, which was always the dominant sort of cultural tradition in Ireland. And it was only really in the late 70s and 80s that visual culture, visual art started to sort of surface and play its own part in the development of a kind of culture. That being said, I think contemporary art, visual contemporary art in this part of the world is very underrated and very underconsidered. The dominant sort of art form is still the literary art forms, writing, poetry, theatre, and visual art tends to be sort of further back down the queue. People don't go to galleries, they don't see a lot of work. The general, I mean, it sounds a bit elitist to say this, but the general consensus is among artists is that contemporary art is not taken that seriously. It's seen as, people actually have said to me, well, it's just a hobby, or you just do it for yourself, and so on. So I think contemporary art is still quite undervalued and underestimated. There isn't that sort of that sense of interest in it that you would get from, say, from Europe and so forth, where they're very interested in their visual culture, they're very interested in visual art. Here, not so much. I think it's very important that a city of this size, of this nature, has places like Kunst Street for artists to be able to have affordable studio space, good quality studio space. You can't really work at home. It's difficult. If it's difficult, I think it's for most artists, it's difficult for them to work in a kind of domestic setting. I think it's important that you have a separate, an independent kind of space and a venue where you go to make artwork. So this is a collective that is studios, but people can come in at any time, and visit artists in their studios, see work, buy work if they want to, and also just view the place and take an interest in it. There are open days and so forth like that, but they're on specific times during the year. But I mean, this place is, if someone wanted to come down and have a look around, the organisation would accommodate that. And in that sense, it provides a very valuable service for artists.